People are often surprised to learn that I am a food inspector. You are? Inspector? And in that you can hear the poorly concealed distrust. I seem too soft, too quiet for someone who has to point out others' mistakes. But in 34 years, I have closed 17 establishments that posed a serious health hazard to customers. I'm proud of that, though I'll never say it out loud. I have a plaque in my closet, given to me by my coworkers on my 30th anniversary. Marjorie Twist, the menace of unsanitary conditions. It's a cute joke. At work, I'm respected, I'm a professional. But at home, it's different. The alarm clock rang, catching me at the sweetest moment of sleep. I reached over to the nightstand, fumbled for the button, and turned off the annoying sound with pleasure. 5 more minutes, just 5 more. I rolled over onto my other side and fell back into slumber. Sleep is my little weakness. Elliot, my late husband, often quipped, "Marjorie, you'd sleep through your own funeral if you could." Now that he's been gone for 5 years, I sleep alone in our double bed, and no one wakes me up in the morning. When I finally opened my eyes, the clock read almost 8. Damn, I'm late again. Jumping out of bed, I rushed into the bathroom, shedding my nightgown as I went. A quick shower, minimal makeup, a foundation to hide age spots, a little blush on my sunken cheeks. At 62, your body betrays you in many ways, but I'm not about to give up without a fight. My house in Little Rock is small, just 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, and a small backyard where I grow roses. Elliot dreamed of a bigger house with a pool, but we never saved enough. Now I'm grateful for this modest house. It's easy to keep it in order on my own. It doesn't feel so empty. In the kitchen, I put the kettle on and took the toast out of the bread box. The sausage in the fridge looks suspicious. My professional deformity doesn't allow me to ignore even the slightest signs of food spoilage. I had to limit myself to peanut butter toast and a cup of strong tea. Today, my schedule includes 2 small restaurants on the west side of town and a new bakery downtown. But before heading out, I decided to take 15 minutes to tend to my roses. May in Arkansas is the best time for gardening. The morning dew is still wet and the air is fresh. I knelt in front of a bush of tea roses, my favorite, though Elliot always preferred the red ones. "They're as passionate as you are at heart, Margie," he'd say, and we both laughed at that obvious untruth. I was never passionate. Balanced, reasonable, dependable. That's how I've always been described. The earth beneath my fingers was soothing. I carefully removed the weeds, careful not to disturb the roots of the roses. My thoughts flowed smoothly, without sharp edges. Working in the garden is the only time when I feel completely protected from the world. The ringing of the phone shattered that fragile calm. Corbin's number. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered. "Hi, Mom. Delia and I want to stop by tonight. Will you be home?" His tone was careless, as if the answer didn't matter. I mentally reviewed my schedule. It was Thursday, so I was usually home by 4. "I'll have time to make dinner if they come over." "Of course, Corbin. What time should I expect you?" 7 o'clock. "And don't cook anything. We'll eat before that." He paused. There was something we needed to discuss. I felt my stomach clench. "We have something to discuss," as translated by my son, usually means they need money. The last time it was replacing the roof on their house for $1,000. Before that, a trip to the Caribbean to refresh their marriage. Elliot would never approve of that kind of spending, but Elliot's gone, and I'm not good at saying no. "Okay, I'll see you at 7, I answered and hung up. The rest of the day passed in a routine of checks. In the first restaurant, found a violation of the temperature regime of meat storage. Wrote a warning, gave 3 days to correct. In the second, everything was in order, and the new bakery pleased me with its cleanliness and attention to detail. I praised the young owner heartily, and she blushed with pleasure. "Thank you, Mrs. Twist. I was so dreading your visit." I smiled. My reputation as a strict but fair inspector is the only thing I truly cherish professionally. When I got home at 3:30, earlier than usual, I decided to bake an apple pie not for my son and daughter-in-law who had said they would eat beforehand, but for myself. There is something soothing about kneading the dough, cutting the apples, sprinkling cinnamon. It's something my mother taught me, and her mother taught her. A tradition passed down from generation to generation. I wonder if Delia taught her daughter, my granddaughter Zoe, how to cook. I doubt it. Delia prefers restaurants and convenience foods. For some reason, last Thanksgiving came to mind. I'd offered to cook the turkey from a family recipe, but Delia had insisted on ordering ready to eat from a fancy restaurant. Why bother, Marjorie? It's not like we're living in the last century. Corbin supported his wife. I remained silent, though inside I was seething with resentment. My grandmother's turkey recipe had been a family tradition since Corbin could walk. At 6:30, the pie was ready, the house filled with the aroma of apples and cinnamon. I showered, changed into a blue dress with a white collar, conservative but neat. I applied a little blush, a dab of lipstick. Elliot always said I didn't need makeup, but without it, I felt faded. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. I took a deep breath and went to open it. Corbin and Delia stood on the doorstep, he in casual jeans and a shirt, she in a fashionable summer dress that emphasized her slim figure. I always feel old and clumsy around Delia, even though there's only 24 years difference between us. Hi, Mom, Corbin kissed me on the cheek. Did you bake again? The whole house smells. Apple pie, I replied, letting them inside. Oh, Marjorie. Delia looked me over from head to toe. Is that a new dress? It's an interesting choice, for your age. I swallowed the barb. It was a dress I'd bought 3 years ago at a department store during a sale. Delia knew it well. She'd been with me that day and wrinkled her nose at everything I tried on. Come into the living room, I've made tea. Do you have anything stronger? Corbin headed straight for the bar that Elliot and I kept for guests. It's been a long day. Sure, take whatever you want. We sat down, they on the couch, me in the chair across from them. Corbin poured himself a whiskey, Delia a glass of wine. He didn't offer me anything. So I began after an awkward pause. Is there something you wanted to discuss? They looked at each other as if deciding who would start. Finally, Corbin coughed. Mom, remember I told you about that big landscaping job for the new apartment complex? I nodded, though I had no recollection of such a conversation. Corbin often assumes that I know all the details of his life, although we see each other once every 2 or 3 weeks, and then at his initiative, when they need something. So the client requires a full visualization of the project in 3-dimensional graphics. This is standard practice now, but I need to upgrade my equipment. Computer, software, maybe a drawing tablet. Yes, Delia picked up on that. This is a great opportunity for Corbin. The complex will be premium, and if the project succeeds, it will attract new customers from the high segment. I looked at their faces, confident, expectant. They didn't even doubt that I'd go for it. How much would it cost? I asked, knowing the answer in advance. About $7,000. Corbin took a sip of whiskey. I'll pay you back as soon as I get paid for the project. 3 or 4 months at the most. I remembered all the previous loans that had never been paid back. Money for Zoe's education, for the renovation of their house, for a new car for Delia. Each time they promised to pay it back, and each time there were unforeseen expenses that made repayment impossible. I'm not sure I have that much right now, I said, even though I knew I had enough in my savings account. It was the money Elliot and I were saving for our old age, for possible medical expenses. Come on, Mom. Corbin drummed his fingers impatiently on the armrest. When your father died, you got the insurance money, plus the sale of his coin collection. You live alone, you spend almost nothing. Where does all the money go? I'm getting old, Corbin. Medical expenses go up every year. You have insurance, he countered. And besides, don't we take care of you if something happens? Delia tensed slightly at those words, but quickly masked her reaction with a smile. Of course, Marjorie, we're family, but right now Corbin really needs this business opportunity. I looked at Elliot's picture on the mantelpiece. He was an accountant, careful with money, always planning ahead. What would he say now? But he's gone, and I'm sitting in front of my son and daughter-in-law who are waiting for my decision. Okay, I finally say. I can give you $5,000 now. The rest will have to wait until next month. Corbin's face instantly brightened. He came over and hugged me, the first genuine expression of affection I'd seen all evening. Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand. And I promise, this time I'll definitely pay you back every dime. Delia smiled too, but her eyes remained cold, assessing. She never loved me, I know that. To her, I was always just a source of extra money, mother-in-law's ATM, as I once overheard her say when she was on the phone with a friend. Wonderful, she said, rising. Now that that's settled, we should get going. Zoe has an important test at school tomorrow. We need to check on her preparation. They left quickly, refusing the pie. Corbin promised to stop by tomorrow to pick up the check. I stood at the window watching them get into their new SUV, the one I'd bought a year ago, by the way. When their car disappeared around the corner, I went back into the kitchen and cut myself a piece of pie. It was perfect. The golden crust, the juicy cinnamon apple filling. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, drinking my tea. And I tried not to think about the fact that I had just agreed to give away another $5,000 that I would never see again. The evening news on TV didn't catch my attention. I switched channels aimlessly until I stopped on an old detective show with Humphrey Bogart. Detectives are my weakness. Elliot had given me a whole collection of Agatha Christie books for our last birthday together. I've reread them all several times. Sometimes I think I could write my own detective story. The Case of the Missing Mother's Money. Not a funny joke. Before I went to bed, I pulled out my checkbook and wrote a check. $5,000, almost a tenth of my savings. I looked at my signature, neat, measured letters. Marjorie Elizabeth Twist. That signature once carried weight in our family. Now it's just a tool to get money. I put the check on the nightstand and turned off the light. Tomorrow will be a new day. I'll wake up later than I should again, rush to work again. Life would continue as usual. But somewhere deep inside, there was a growing feeling that it couldn't go on like this. I just didn't know how to change it yet. Mrs. Twist, these forms are due by the end of the day. Nancy, the new employee in the department, placed a folder of paperwork on my desk. I nodded, not taking my eyes off the microscope. The sample I was examining showed the presence of bacteria in a sample taken from a new Italian restaurant, Trattoria Bella. The owner, an emotional Italian man with a bushy mustache, is sure to make a scene when I present him with the violations. But it's my job to make sure people don't get sick. Minus Ms. Johnson wanted me to tell you that you've also been put in charge of inspecting the new school food line, Nancy added, lingering at the door. She says you're the only one she trusts on this matter. I finally looked up and smiled. Ms. Johnson, our principal, has always relied on me in difficult cases. School nutrition is politics, parents, the administrative board, and all on top of normal safety standards. Assigning me to this role is a sign of trust. Tell Ms. Johnson I'll look into it on Monday, I replied. When Nancy left, I returned to the microscope. Here in Little Rock's Food Quality Control Lab, I feel like I belong. There are no condescending glances, no veiled requests for money, no feeling of being invisible in your own family. After completing my research, I compiled a detailed report on the abuses at Trattoria Bella and sent it in for approval. Then tackled the forms that Nancy had brought in. Routine work but requiring attention to detail is my middle name. At 5 o'clock, the workday was over. I packed my things, said goodbye to my coworkers, and headed for the exit. Ms. Johnson caught up with me in the hallway. Marjorie, I wanted to personally thank you for agreeing to take over the school food service. The mayor has called 3 times this week, and he's very concerned about the Fayetteville incident. I read about it, I nodded. 32 kids with food poisoning. Pure irresponsibility. Exactly. And I know that if you take over our schools, that won't happen here. She squeezed my shoulder lightly. You're our most experienced inspector, and I'm glad you're still with us, despite the possibility of leaving. We both knew what she was talking about. After Elliot's death, a lot of people expected me to retire. After all, I was already 57, and money wasn't a problem. But work is the only place where I feel needed, where my opinion matters. I'm not going anywhere, Helen, I smiled. Not until you kick me out. That's out of the question, she laughed. I'll see you Monday. On the way home, I stopped at the supermarket to buy groceries for the weekend. As I pushed the cart between the aisles, I remembered that Sunday night Corbin and his family were coming over for dinner. It's a tradition from my time living with Elliot, though now I often wonder if they're coming over because of family affection or because of my cooking. Pondering the menu, I decided to make a roast. Corbin had always loved it. After filling the cart with the necessary ingredients, I headed toward the register when I noticed Beverly Whitmore, my neighbor, studying the cheese display. Beverly! I called out. She turned around and waved hello. Beverly was 65, but looked younger because of her vigor. A widow like me, she had moved into the house across the street 3 years ago and had since become my only real friend in Little Rock. Marjorie, darling, I was just thinking about you. Beverly walked over to my cart. What do you say to a glass of wine tonight? I opened the bottle of red my son had sent me from California. It was too good to drink alone. I'd love to, I agreed. I'll just get the groceries home and join you. An hour later, I was already sitting in Beverly's cozy living room. Her house was decorated in the Mediterranean-style bright colors, lots of pottery, photos from her travels. Beverly had traveled extensively since her husband's death. It's something we always planned to do together, she said. But Richard was always too busy. Now I'm doing it for both of us. So, Beverly handed me a glass of rich red wine. How was your week? The usual. Work, home, work again. I took a sip. This wine is really excellent, isn't it? Jeremy says it's some kind of special harvest year. I don't know anything about it. I just want it to taste good. She settled into the chair across from me. What about Corbin and his family? Have they stopped by this week? I hesitated to answer. Beverly was the only person I could talk frankly about my son with. Last night, they asked for more money. Beverly shook her head. And you gave it to them? 5,000. I stared into my glass, avoiding her gaze. For his business. New equipment. Marjorie? There was concern in her voice. We've talked about this before. They're using you. He's my son, Bev. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he has the right to siphon money out of you every chance he gets. How many times has he borrowed money? And how many times has he paid it back? I didn't say anything. We both knew the answer. Remember last year when Delia wanted a new car? Beverly continued. He came to you with a story about how their old car kept breaking down and being a danger to Zoe. A week later, Delia was driving around in a brand new SUV that cost more than your house. It was for Zoe's safety. I tried to defend my son, but the argument sounded unconvincing, even to me. Marjorie, Beverly leaned forward. I'm saying this as a friend. You're letting them take advantage of you, and it's not just the money. I've seen the way they treat you. Like you're some kind of, a burden instead of a mother and grandmother. I took another sip of wine, feeling it warm my throat. Beverly was right, but admitting it out loud was like betraying my own son. You know, I said after a pause, when Corbin was 12, he saved up for a new bike. He saved every dollar he got for cleaning up leaves from the neighbors or helping Mr. Jenkins in his store. Elliot was teaching him the value of money and labor. Somewhere along the way, those lessons had been forgotten. Beverly nodded. People change, especially under the influence of other people. I don't want to speak ill of your sister-in-law, but she's greedy and manipulative, I finished for her. You think I don't see that? The problem is, Corbin changed before she did. After college, he was different. Different. Like he was ashamed of me and Elliot, of our simple lifestyle. Memories came suddenly. Corbin coming home for the vacations with new friends talking about yachts and ski resorts. Corbin bashfully showing them our humble home. Corbin constantly comparing us to the parents of his classmates who were doctors, lawyers, businessmen. When he brought Delia over for the first time, I hoped she'd make him happy. I sighed. And maybe she does. It's just that that happiness is built on material things they can't afford. And that's why they use you as an ATM, Beverly concluded. We sat in silence, each immersed in our own thoughts. Then Beverly got up and brought out a plate of cheese and crackers. Let's change the subject, she suggested. Have you seen the new episode of Murder at the Manor? Detective Malloway finally figured out who poisoned the Countess. We spent the rest of the evening talking about detective shows and Beverly's plans for her next trip. She was going to Portugal in the fall. When I got home, I was relieved. Beverly had an amazing ability to make me feel understood, even when we disagreed with each other. On Sunday, I started cooking dinner first thing in the morning. The roast was slowly simmering in the oven, filling the house with an appetizing aroma. I baked apple pie, the favorite dessert of Zoe, my 14-year-old granddaughter. Despite all the problems with Corbin and Delia, I genuinely loved Zoe and tried to keep in touch with her, though she had become increasingly distant lately, absorbed in the world of teenagers. At 6 sharp, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Corbin, Delia, and Zoe entered the house, bringing with them the cool evening air and the tension that had always accompanied our meetings in recent years. Hi, Grandma. Zoe gave me a peck on the cheek and immediately ducked into her phone. What's up, Mom? Corbin handed me a bottle of wine. Cheap, I noticed, though I knew they always had expensive brands at home. Great, thanks. I accepted the bottle. Come on in, dinner's almost ready. Delia looked around the living room. Do you still have those old curtains? They're so 50s. I like them, I replied, trying to keep my tone friendly. They were a gift from Elliot's mother. I just thought you could freshen things up. At your age, it's important to keep up with the times. At her age, Corbin said with a slight chuckle. Comfort is more important than fashion, isn't it, Mother? I didn't answer, busy arranging the cutlery. Their comments about my age always hurt. Delia is only 24 years younger than me, but she talks as if I were an ancient old woman on the doorstep of a nursing home. Over dinner, the conversation turned to Corbin's work. His landscaping company had been around for 7 years, but despite the promising projects he kept talking about, the financial situation always seemed to remain precarious. How's the project for the new apartment complex coming along? I asked as I put the roast on my plate. Great, Corbin perked up. I got the new equipment, that computer and programs I was talking about. I've already created preliminary visualizations, and the client is thrilled. Glad to hear it, I tried to sound sincere. Maybe this time things will really work out well. Yes, it could be a breakthrough for the business, Delia added. By the way, we're thinking about remodeling the kitchen. Our cabinets are totally outdated. I almost choked on my wine. They just got $5,000 from me and they're already planning another big spending spree? Weren't you going to put money aside for Zoe's college fund? I asked cautiously. Mom, college is 4 years away, Corbin said. Besides, there are so many options for financing an education these days. Loans, grants, debt, I added quietly. What did you say? Delia raised her eyebrows. I said that student loans are debts that then hang around your neck for years. Well, not everyone can afford to pay for college out of pocket. Delia took a sip of wine. We don't, have a stockpile of cash to just spend. That was a direct allusion to my savings. I felt the color rush to my face. I just wanted to say that planning for Zoe's future is more important than new kitchen cabinets. And I don't think you should be telling us how to raise our daughter. Delia put down her fork. Especially since your parenting methods are, shall we say, ambiguous. What do you mean? I tried to remain calm. Well, Corbin always says you were overly strict. All those rules, restrictions. Modern parents use more progressive methods. I looked at my son, expecting him to stand up for me, to refute what my wife was saying. But Corbin shrugged awkwardly. Times were different, he muttered. Yes, times were different, I agreed, feeling bitter. Back then, children respected their parents. Respect has to be earned, Marjorie, Delia countered. It doesn't come automatically. Come on, Corbin interrupted. We're here for a family dinner, not an argument. I noticed that Zoe was staring tensely at her plate, clearly uncomfortable. Zoe, how was school? I asked, trying to change the subject. It's fine, she shrugged, not looking up. The teachers are annoying. Zoe's in the school play, Delia said proudly. She's playing the lead. She is? That's great. I was genuinely excited. What play? Romeo and Juliet, Zoe mumbled. I'm playing Juliet. She needs a dress for the play, Delia added immediately. The costumes have to be authentic, and the school insists that the parents take care of that. And there it was, the real reason for the visit. I felt my heart squeeze. Can't they just come for once for no ulterior motive? I'm sure you'll find a beautiful dress within your budget, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. The thing is, Delia leaned forward, we've already found the perfect dress, but it costs $600. $600 for a costume for a school play? I couldn't hide my surprise. It's not just a costume, Mom, Corbin interjected. It's an investment. Zoe can use it for other events. Plus, if she decides to study theater arts in college, it'll be a good start for her portfolio. I thought you were planning a kitchen remodel, I remarked. Is this a good time for that kind of spending? That's why we were thinking, Delia began, that I could buy a dress. I finished for her. It's for your only granddaughter. Delia smiled, that special smile she saved for when she wanted money from me. Don't you want to see her shine on stage? I looked at Zoe, who was now looking at me expectantly. Of course I wanted her to shine. Of course I loved her and wanted the best for her. But why did that always have to translate into money? Why did our relationship come down to that? Of course I want Zoe to be happy, I said slowly. But, Mom, Corbin leaned across the table, this is very important to her. And for us. I saw Delia tense slightly, preparing for my rejection. I saw the hope in my granddaughter's eyes, and I saw the look on my son's face, a mixture of impatience, slight embarrassment, and confidence that I would eventually give in, as I always did. Let's have dessert first, I said, rising to fetch the apple pie. I stood in the kitchen for a minute, breathing deeply. Beverly was right. They were using me. But what could I do? Say no and see the disappointment in Zoe's eyes? Say no and give Delia another excuse to say mean things about me behind my back? By the time I returned with the pie, the conversation had already turned to Delia's job. As a public relations specialist for a pharmaceutical company, she liked to talk about the important people she had to talk to about business lunches at expensive restaurants. Last week I had lunch with the editor-in-chief of the Arkansas Times, she bragged. They're going to do a story on our new drug. That's great. I handed out plates of pie. Zoe, I made your favorite. Thank you, Grandma. She smiled weakly. But I'm on a diet. Dieting? At 14? I looked at Delia in surprise. All the girls in her class are watching their figure, Delia explained. It's normal. It's normal to starve yourself when you're a teenager? I shook my head. At her age, her metabolism. Marjorie, Delia interrupted me. Today's ideas about healthy eating are very different than they were in your day. Science has moved on. Yes, Mom, Corbin encouraged her. Things are different now. It's hard for you to understand because you're old, I finished for him. Outdated, with backward attitudes? That's not what I meant. Corbin looked confused. That's exactly what I meant. I set my fork aside. You both keep insinuating that my views, my experience, are worthless because I'm older than you. And you're not shy about asking me for money every time you see me. There was a heavy silence in the room. Zoe stared at her phone, pretending not to hear the conversation. Delia straightened, her eyes narrowing. Is that what this is about? She smiled coldly. Do you feel like we only value you because of the money? Don't you? I looked her straight in the eye. When was the last time you came just like that, without an implicit request for financial help? It's not fair, Mom. Corbin shook his head. We're a family. Families help each other. Yes, but the help has to be mutual, I objected. When was the last time you asked me if I needed help? Am I lonely? Wasn't I tired of living alone after my father died? Corbin looked as if I'd hit him. Delia bit her lip, obviously holding back a sharp reply. We didn't think, Corbin began. Exactly, I sighed. You didn't think. And that's the saddest part. The insistent sound of my phone's notification snapped me out of a deep sleep. I opened my eyes reluctantly, blinking against the bright sunlight streaming through the slits in the curtains. The clock read 7:30, too early for Wednesday, my day off. I wanted to roll over onto my other side and go back to sleep, but the phone vibrated again. With a quiet groan, I reached over to the bedside table and picked up the phone. A series of notifications from the banking app popped up on the screen. I put on my reading glasses and squinted and began to look through the messages. Transaction notification. Attempted payment in the amount of $4,699.99 to Elegant Jewelry. Time, 5:37 a.m. I sat up abruptly in bed, my sleep gone. $4,000 plus dollars? In a jewelry store? At 5 in the morning? The next notification was even more disturbing. Transaction notification, attempted payment in the amount of $2,800 at Travel Plus Escape. Time, 5:42 a.m. My heart raced in my chest. I'd never made a purchase like this, much less at dawn. Something was categorically wrong. With trembling fingers, I flipped through the rest of the notices. There were 5 in all, totaling almost $10,000. All early in the morning, all at stores I'd never been to. I quickly checked my wallet in the bag on my dresser. The credit card was in place, in the familiar compartment. I stared puzzled at the plastic rectangle. How could transactions be made if I had the card? Online fraud? But then, why did the notices mention physical stores? Throwing on a robe, I went down to the kitchen and turned on the coffee maker. I needed to clear my head before calling the bank. While the coffee was brewing, I checked my notifications one more time. Now I noticed that all the transactions were marked pending or authorization pending. This meant that the money hadn't been debited yet. I might have a chance to stop this outrage. With a cup of hot coffee, I settled down at the kitchen table and started looking into the situation. The first call was to the bank's customer service. "Good morning, First National Bank of Arkansas. How can I help you?" The operator's voice sounded cheerful and professional. "Good morning. My name is Marjorie Twist." I tried to speak calmly. "There were some suspicious transactions on my card this morning, and I'd like to stop them." "Of course, Ms. Twist. I'll need to verify your identity. Can you give me the last four digits of your social security number and your date of birth?" I dictated the necessary information, and the operator, who identified himself as Thomas, confirmed my identity. "I see 5 pending transactions this morning," he said after a pause. "Are you saying you didn't make them?" "Absolutely not. I was asleep at the time, and I have the card on me." "I see. In that case, we will block your card immediately and reject all pending transactions. You'll have to visit a bank branch to get a new card. You can also file a fraud report if you wish." "Yes, please block the card," I exhaled with relief. "Can you tell me exactly where they tried to use my card?" Thomas gave me the addresses of the stores, all of which were in the Park Plaza shopping center in downtown Little Rock. I wrote down the information, thanked the operator, and ended the call. Sitting at my desk with my unfinished coffee, I tried to figure out how this could have happened. Who could have accessed my credit card or its data? And then it hit me, my phone. More specifically, the banking app that Corbin had helped me set up just 2 days ago. On Sunday, after a family dinner I'd tried not to bring up because of an unpleasant confrontation, Corbin noticed I was still checking my bank account on the computer. "Mom, this is the Stone Age," he shook his head. "Let me install a bank app on your phone. It'll be much more convenient." I agreed, and Corbin spent about 20 minutes downloading the app and setting it up on my smartphone. He entered my information, set up my fingerprint for quick access, and showed me how to use the basic functions. "There. Now you're in the 21st century," he joked as he handed me back my phone. I thanked him then, thinking my son was caring. Now I had my doubts. Could Corbin have somehow copied my credit card information? Or maybe he had customized the app so that he could access my account. The thought was so painful that I tried to push it away. Corbin is my son. Despite all his faults, his condescending attitude toward me, his constant requests for money, he couldn't stoop to outright theft, not my son, not the child Elliot and I had raised with love and care. But the facts said otherwise. The Elegant Jewelers jewelry store was Delia's favorite place. She often mentioned it when she bragged about her new acquisitions. And the Travel Plus Escape travel agency. Wasn't that where she and Corbin had booked their trip to the Caribbean 2 years ago? The one I paid for to rekindle their marriage. I felt nausea coming up my throat. I needed more information before jumping to conclusions. I decided to call the stores where the payment was attempted. The first one was a jewelry store. After a few beeps, a woman's voice answered, "Elegant Jewelry, how may I help you?" "Hello," I coughed, trying to gather my thoughts. "My name is Marjorie Twist. There was an attempt to use my credit card at your store this morning, but I didn't make the purchase. I'd like to know the details." "Oh!" The woman on the other end of the line sounded surprised. "Just a moment, please." After a brief pause, she returned to the conversation. "Yes, there was a transaction here in Twist's name early this morning. A purchase of a white gold and diamond necklace. The transaction failed due to authorization issues, and the buyer said he would return later with another card." My heart skipped a beat. "Can you describe the customer?" "Sure," the woman replied. "A man in his 40s, dark hair, very polite. Said he was buying an anniversary present for his wife. Description matched Corbin's." I thanked the store employee, and having completed the call, immediately dialed the number of the travel agency. There, the story repeated itself. A man matching Corbin's description tried to book a trip for 2 to the Bahamas using my credit card. The transaction failed, and he promised to come back with another card. I put my phone down on the table and covered my face with my hands. There was no more doubt left. Corbin had stolen my credit card information and was trying to use it to buy expensive gifts for Delia. My own son. Tears came to my eyes, but I forced myself to hold back. This was no time for weakness. I had to act. The first thing I did was call the other stores on the transaction list: a designer clothing boutique, an electronics store, and a spa. Everywhere, the story was the same. Corbin was trying to use my card to buy gifts that were no doubt intended for Delia. I then called the bank back and confirmed that all transactions had been successfully blocked. They promised to issue me a new card, which I could pick up at a bank branch within 2 or 3 business days. Finished with these urgent matters, I sat down on the living room couch, feeling completely devastated. Corbin's betrayal had hurt deeper than I could have imagined. It was one thing to ask me for money, even if it was all the time, even if you knew you'd never get it back. But to steal it? Secretly copy card data while you pretend to help with technology? I remembered Beverly's words. They're using you. Now it took on a new, more sinister meaning. How long had Corbin been planning this theft? Was it a spontaneous decision when he saw an opportunity while customizing the app? Or had he purposefully offered to help, already having a plan in mind? My gaze fell on a photograph on the mantelpiece. Corbin at the age of 10, smiling, with a fishing rod in his hands. Elliot stands beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder, a proud father. It was summer. We went to Lake Wachita. Corbin caught his first big fish and was so excited he almost fell into the water from excitement. Elliot had time to cheer him on. He was always there to support his son. What would Elliot say now? How would he react when he learned that his son had become a thief? Elliot was a man of principles, honest to the core. He wouldn't turn a blind eye, even if it was his only child. The phone rang, interrupting my musings. Corbin's number. My heart raced. Does he already know the transactions didn't go through? Is he calling to come up with some excuse? Or maybe he doesn't know yet and is planning another attempt. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello?" "Hi, Mom." Corbin's voice sounded strained. "How are you doing?" "What do you want, Corbin?" My tone was colder than I'd planned. I was just wondering if there were any problems with the banking app I installed. Is it working fine?" So that's it. He's checking to see if I've noticed any attempted transactions. He probably already knows they didn't go through and is trying to figure out if I guessed he was involved. "Oh, the app works fine," I replied with feigned nonchalance. The notifications come in a timely manner, especially about suspicious transactions in the early morning hours. There was a long pause. "Really?" His voice shook. "What kind of transactions?" "Don't pretend, Corbin." I couldn't hold back any longer. "I know it was you who tried to use my credit card this morning. I talked to the people at the stores. They described you, jewelry, trip to the Bahamas, designer clothes. What, are you throwing Delia a birthday party on me?" "Mom, I can explain." He sounded panicked. "It's not what you think." "What am I supposed to think, Corbin? That my son didn't steal my credit card information? That he didn't try to spend almost $10,000 without my knowledge?" "Look, Delia and I are going through a difficult time. Our anniversary is in a week, and I wanted to do something special to save the marriage. I was going to pay it back as soon as I got paid for the apartment project." "Like all the previous loans?" I was filled with bitterness. "Corbin, you didn't ask me for that money. You tried to steal it. I would have told you later anyway." His voice rose. "I knew you wouldn't approve of such spending, but I needed to save my marriage. Would you rather Delia and I divorced? For Zoe to grow up in a divided family? Manipulation, manipulation again." He was trying to make me feel guilty for catching him stealing. "Don't you dare hold me responsible for your actions." My voice shook with restrained anger. "If your marriage is in jeopardy, expensive gifts won't save it. And if Delia stays with you only because of diamonds and traveling, what kind of marriage are we talking about?" "You don't understand," Corbin went on the defensive. "Delia is used to a certain standard of living. Her parents have always lived off the grid. If I can't provide the same for her, then what? She's going to go to someone richer?" I couldn't believe we were actually having this conversation. "Corbin, listen to yourself. You're justifying stealing from your own mother because your wife likes expensive things?" "It wasn't stealing," he screamed. "I was going to give it all back." "Without my knowledge and consent is theft," I said firmly. "I blocked the card and canceled all transactions. I've also filed a fraud report with the bank." "What?" He sounded genuinely shocked. You reported me to the bank? Your own son? I didn't give your name, I clarified. I just reported the unauthorized use of the card. But if the bank decides to investigate and goes to the police, you can't do this to me. Corbin sounded scared and angry at the same time. Do you realize what I'm in for if this goes to the police? My reputation, my business, everything would be ruined. You should have thought of that before you stole my card details. I felt strangely calm despite the storm of emotions inside. I always gave you money when you asked for it. Always. Even when I knew I wouldn't get it back. Why couldn't you just ask? Because you wouldn't have agreed to that amount of money. There was desperation in his voice. Not for Delia's gifts. You never approved of my marriage, never truly accepted her. It wasn't fair. I've always tried to get along with Delia despite her coldness and constant barbs. Did Delia have anything to do with it? I asked. Did she know about your plans? The long pause was more eloquent than any answer. Corbin? It was her idea, he finally admitted quietly. She said you'd never notice if we were careful, that we could use your card several times before you suspected anything. My heart seemed to stop for a moment. Not only my son, but his wife was planning to systematically steal from me. It wasn't a spontaneous transgression, but an elaborate plan. I don't know what to say, I muttered. Yeah, I need time to think about this. Mom, please! Corbin's voice became pleading. Let's meet and talk. I'll explain everything. We'll find a way out of this situation. Not today, Corbin. I felt infinitely tired. I'll call you when I'm ready. I ended the call without waiting for him to answer and put the phone down on the coffee table. My mind was in chaos. Anger, hurt, disappointment, distrust. All of those feelings fought for supremacy. My gaze fell again on the picture of little Corbin with Elliot. When had it all gone wrong? At what point had my loving son turned into a man capable of stealing from his own mother? And what should I do now? I got up from the couch and walked to the window. Street life went on as usual. Neighbors walking their dogs, children playing on their lawns, couriers delivering packages. A normal day in Little Rock. Only for me, the world had turned upside down. The phone rang again. This time it was Delia. I didn't answer it. A minute later, a message came through. Marjorie, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Please call back. A misunderstanding? Trying to steal $10,000 is a misunderstanding? I deleted the message without replying. I needed to gather my thoughts to decide what to do next. Should I go to the police? Forgive them and try to forget? Demand the return of all previous loans as a condition of my silence? I headed to the kitchen to make another cup of coffee. The day was just beginning and I already felt like I'd experienced a lifetime. But one thing I knew for sure was that my relationship with Corbin and Delia would never be the same again. The line had been crossed, the trust broken. Perhaps somewhere deep down inside, I'd always known this would happen. That years of neglect, manipulation, and financial demands would one day lead to something like this. Perhaps that's why I didn't feel as shocked as I should have. The phone rang a few more times. Corbin, Delia, Corbin again. I didn't answer it. I needed time and space to think about my next steps. I wasn't going to make any hasty decisions under the influence of emotion, whether it was anger or a false sense of familial obligation. Grabbing a cup of fresh coffee, I walked out into the backyard to my roses. They always made me feel soothed. The May sun gently warmed my skin. A light breeze brought the scent of blooming plants. Nature continued its eternal cycle despite human dramas and betrayals. There was a wisdom in that. 2 days passed in agonizing anticipation. I didn't answer Corbin and Delia's calls, which came with depressing regularity. Sometimes the phone would go silent for a few hours, giving false hope of respite, and then start vibrating again with incoming calls and messages. Mom, please answer it. We need to talk. Marjorie, you've got it all wrong. Let us explain. Mom, it's just a misunderstanding. Call me back. Misunderstanding. They kept using that word, as if the attempt to steal $10,000 could have been a simple mistake, an accidental misunderstanding. Over the days, I gathered all the evidence of what they'd done. I printed out bank statements detailing attempted transactions. I recorded conversations with stores where Corbin tried to use my card. Got official confirmation from the bank that the card had been blocked due to suspicious activity. I also made a list of all the loans I'd made to Corbin and Delia over the past 5 years, since Elliot's death. The numbers shocked even me. In total, they had borrowed almost $63,000 from me. Not a dime of that money had been returned. It was Thursday, my day off. I decided it was time to put an end to this situation. Enough of the silence and avoidance. It was time for a serious conversation. I called Corbin in the morning when I knew he had to be home before leaving for work. "Mom," he answered after the first dial tone, his voice sounding excited and relieved. "Finally, I was beginning to think you'd never answer." "Corbin," my voice was calm and firm, "I want you and Delia to come over tonight. We need to talk." "Of course, Mom, of course." He sounded almost joyful. "What time?" 7 o'clock. "And Corbin," I paused, "this is a serious conversation. I want Zoe to stay home." "Yes, I understand." His tone became more subdued. "We'll be there at 7. After the call, I felt strangely calm. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. I spent the day doing the usual things. I did the laundry, vacuumed the living room, watered the roses. The mundane activities helped keep me balanced for the storm ahead. At 6:30, I laid out all the papers on the coffee table in the living room bank statements, a list of loans, notes with dates and amounts. Then I made tea and sat in a chair waiting for them to arrive. They showed up at 7 sharp, both tense and unnaturally polite. Corbin kissed me on the cheek. I forced myself not to pull away. Delia stayed just behind, her face an impenetrable mask. "Come in," I pointed to the couch across from my chair. "Tea's on the table if you'd like it." They sat down next to each other, too straight, as if they were being interviewed. Corbin immediately began to speak. "Mother, first of all, I want to apologize for that misunderstanding with the card. It was stupid of me. I shouldn't have." I raised my hand, stopping him. "Let's be clear about what exactly happened first, Corbin. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You deliberately copied my credit card information when you were supposedly helping me with my banking app. You then attempted to use that information to make nearly $10,000 worth of purchases without my knowledge or consent. That's called theft. Or more specifically, credit card fraud, which is a felony." Delia intervened, her voice surprisingly soft. "Marjorie, you've got it all wrong. Corbin would never— I have proof, Delia." I pointed to the documents on the table. "I talked to the people at the stores. They described Corbin. They confirmed that he was trying to buy jewelry, a trip to the Bahamas, and designer clothes, all for you. So please, let's dispense with the denials." Corbin lowered his head, his shoulders slumped. "Okay," he finally said. "I admit that I took your card data, but you don't understand the desperate situation we're in." "Explain." I crossed my arms over my chest. "My business is on the verge of bankruptcy." He looked up at me with eyes full of pain. "The last 2 major clients have abandoned my services in favor of more established companies. We have a huge mortgage debt 3 months overdue. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the house. Zoe needs money for college in 4 years, and we don't have a dime for her education. So you decided the best way out was to steal from your own mother?" I was desperate. His voice rose. I didn't see any other way out. I was going to pay it all back when things got better. "Like all the previous loans?" I took a sheet of calculations from the table. "Over the last 5 years, you've borrowed $63,000 from me, Corbin. Not one dime has been repaid." Delia made a quiet, indignant sound. "Did you keep records? Recorded every dollar you gave your own son?" "Yes, Delia, I kept records. Because they weren't gifts. Every time Corbin promised to pay me back. Every time I believed him. And every time he broke his promise." "That's not fair," Corbin interjected. "You know we've been in financial trouble all these years." "I know." I nodded. "But I also know that you bought a new car last year. That Delia wears designer clothes. That you've gone on vacation 3 times in the last 2 years. That doesn't sound like the behavior of people who are really struggling to survive." "You don't understand." Delia straightened, her eyes narrowing. "In my job, it's important to look successful. I can't show up to client meetings in cheap clothes. It's a matter of professional image. And traveling?" I raised my eyebrows. "Is that an image issue too?" "We need a vacation from stress." She raised her voice. "Do you think it's easy to live on the brink of bankruptcy, worrying about money all the time? No, it's not easy, I agreed. That's why I've always tried to help you when you asked. But there's a difference between asking for help and stealing, Delia. It wasn't stealing. Corbin pounded his fist on the armrest of the couch. I was going to tell you, just later, when everything's settled. You were only going to tell me you spent $10,000 on my credit card after the money would have been spent. I shook my head. That doesn't make the situation any better, Corbin. There was a heavy pause. Corbin stared at the floor. Delia sat with a tense face. I took a sip of tea, gathering my thoughts for the next part of the conversation. Here's what I've decided, I said at last. I'm not going to go to the police with a fraud report. Corbin looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Thanks, Mom. I'm not finished, I interrupted him. I won't go to the police on one condition. You give me back all the money you've taken over the years. What? Delia looked like she'd been punched. 63,000? That's impossible. Not right away, I clarified. We'll work out a payment schedule. $1,000 a month. It'll take a little over 5 years, but I'm willing to wait. $1,000 a month? Corbin looked stunned. Mom, you know we can't afford it. Then sell the car. I shrugged. Or move to a smaller apartment. Or Delia could wear clothes from regular stores, not from designers. There are plenty of ways to cut costs. You can't seriously suggest that, Delia pitched forward. We're a family. Families help each other, not bill each other. That's right, Delia. Families help each other. I've been helping you for years. Now it's your turn to help me by returning what you owe. But Mom, Corbin turned to pleading, think of Zoe. If we have to give you $1,000 a month, we can't give her the opportunities she deserves. Sports classes, music lessons, summer camps. This is it. Manipulation through my love for my granddaughter. I felt anger building up inside, but I forced myself to stay calm. Don't use Zoe as a pressure tool, Corbin. It's beneath even you. I'm just telling the truth. He spread his hands. We're barely making ends meet. If you made us pay that much every month, it would ruin our lives. What if the police caught you trying to commit credit card fraud? I parried. Do you think it wouldn't ruin your life? Criminal prosecution, possible jail time, loss of business and reputation? Corbin turned pale. Delia put her hand on his shoulder in a protective gesture. Marjorie, she tried to change tactics, her voice almost ingratiating. We realize what we did was wrong. Corbin made a mistake. But can't you forgive your only son? Isn't a mother's love stronger than resentment? I felt something tingle inside. A mother's love. It had always been my weakness, the lever they pulled when they wanted something from me. But not this time. I love Corbin, I answered quietly. I always have, and I always will. But love doesn't mean letting yourself be used. Love doesn't mean turning a blind eye to betrayal. It wasn't betrayal, Corbin exclaimed. I was desperate. I saw no other way out. There was another way out. I looked him straight in the eye. You could have just asked me for help. You could have been honest about your problems. I've always helped you when you asked. But not this time. He shook his head. You wouldn't have given $10,000 for gifts for Delia. Probably not, I agreed. But we could have discussed how I could help you with your mortgage or other pressing problems. Instead, you decided to steal from me behind my back. It was a momentary weakness. Corbin lowered his head. I saw an opportunity when I was helping you with the application and gave in to the impulse. Not true. I shook my head. When I spoke to the store's employees, they said you came prepared. You knew what you wanted to buy. You even told them about the anniversary you were picking out gifts for. It wasn't an impulse decision, Corbin. It was a plan. He remained silent, unable to refute the obvious. Delia decided to change strategy. Okay, we admit it was wrong. But your demand to return all $63,000 is simply unrealistic. That's just cruel. Cruel. I raised my eyebrows. It's cruel to ask you to pay back the money you borrowed? The money Corbin promised to pay back? You knew perfectly well that we couldn't repay such sums. There was resentment in Delia's voice. You gave it to us because we were family, because you wanted to help. And now all of a sudden you want to be a banker and demand interest? I'm not asking for interest, Delia. Just the amount you owe. And I'm giving you 5 years to pay it back, which is very generous under the circumstances. That's impossible. Corbin shook his head. We can't physically pay 1,000 a month. Maybe 300 or 400. 500, I said firmly. No less. And we'll draw up an official document signed by both of you. They looked at each other. I could see the emotions in their eyes. Distrust, anger, calculation, humility. That's it? Corbin finally asked. We sign the paper, start paying off the debt, and you forget about the incident with the card? Almost. I straightened in my chair. There's something else. I want you both to admit what you've been doing all these years. Not just borrowing money, using me, manipulating my feelings, treating me without the respect anyone deserves, let alone a mother and mother-in-law. It's not fair. Delia jumped to her feet. We've always treated you with respect. Have we? I looked up at her. Constant comments about my age, my outdated style, disparaging remarks about my work and hobbies. That's respect? Using my love for my granddaughter as a way to pressure me is respect? Delia opened her mouth but couldn't find anything to object. Mom, Corbin looked genuinely upset. I never meant to make you feel disrespected. I don't know how we got to this point. I know, I said quietly. Small steps. Every time I gave in, every time I didn't speak my mind, every time I let you overstep your boundaries, we took another step toward what happened. There was a heavy silence in the room. I finished my tea and set the cup on the table. Here's my proposal, I said. We'll draw up a contract to pay the debt, $500 a month. You sign it today. If you violate the payment schedule or try to cheat me again in any way, I'm going to the police to report you for credit card fraud. I have all the proof I need, and believe me, I won't be shy about using it. Would you really do that? Corbin looked at me with disbelief. Would you send your own son to prison? I held his gaze. Yes, Corbin. Because I believe in taking responsibility for my actions. That's what I've tried to teach you all your life, apparently without success. He lowered his head, ashamed. All right, he said at last. We agree to your terms. I'm not done yet. I held up my hand. There is one more condition. You will start treating me with the respect I deserve. No condescending comments, no manipulation. We will communicate like adults, as equals. Delia snorted. How do you measure that? Are you going to measure our respect on some scale? No, Delia. I will gauge it by your actions. And if I sense that you continue to treat me like an ATM or a liability, our relationship will change accordingly. What does that mean? Corbin frowned. It means I will no longer allow you to take advantage of me, I replied simply. I will set boundaries and stick to them. And if you can't respect those boundaries, we'll have to cut communication to a minimum. Are you threatening to cut ties with your own son? There was disbelief in Corbin's voice. No, Corbin. I'm just saying that relationships are a two-way street. They require mutual respect and care. So far, it's been one way. Delia crossed her arms over her chest. So now you're going to monitor our every word, every gesture, looking for hidden insults in ordinary conversations? No, Delia. I shook my head. I'm simply asking you to treat me as you would like to be treated, with basic respect and kindness. Is that so much to ask? She didn't answer, but I could see her jaw tense. So, I summarized, we have a deal. Payments of $500 a month starting in June and a new level of mutual respect in our relationship? Corbin nodded slowly. Yes, we agree. Good. I took the prepared document from the table. Then sign here. I made 3 copies, one for each of us. They signed silently, their faces tense. When the formalities were over, Corbin asked, What now? Are we still family? I looked at my son, those familiar facial features I'd loved since he was born. Despite everything that had happened, I still saw in him that little boy who had once come running to me for comfort after falling off his bike. But I also saw a grown man who had made his choices and needed to take responsibility for them. It had been 3 weeks since the night Corbin and Delia had signed the repayment agreement. 3 weeks of absolute silence. No calls, no texts, no visits. Only a bank notice of the first $500 wire transfer, which arrived on June 1st, right on schedule. I shouldn't have been surprised by their reaction. They've always taken any attempt to set boundaries badly. But somewhere deep inside, there was a hope that this serious conversation would be a turning point, that they would understand, realize, change. Naive, of course. People don't change overnight, especially if they don't see the need to. The garden became my sanctuary these days. I spent hours there tending to the roses, pulling weeds, planting new plants. The physical labor helped with the emotional pain, that tugging feeling of emptiness in my chest. I lost my son. Again. Only this time it wasn't because of him leaving for college or getting married, but because of his own choice to turn his back on me. One of those days, as I was working in the garden, pruning the blooming rosebuds, Beverly called over the fence, "Marjorie, you're not answering your phone." I was beginning to worry. I looked up and saw my neighbor's concerned face. It was only now that I realized I'd been avoiding communication for the past few weeks, wallowing in my own pain. "I'm sorry, Bev." I tried to smile. "It's just been a lot of thinking." "It's time to stop thinking alone," she said firmly. "I brought blueberry pie and that bottle of wine you liked. I'll be in your kitchen in 10 minutes. It wasn't a question, and I was grateful to her for that. Sometimes we need someone to pull us out of the maelstrom of self-reflection. 15 minutes later, we were sitting at my kitchen table, pouring wine into glasses. Beverly didn't rush me through the conversation, just sliced the pie and set a plate in front of me. "Eat," she commanded. "I've seen how much weight you've lost in the last month." I obediently picked up my fork. The pie was delicious sweet and sour blueberries, crisp crust, perfect balance of flavors. "Thank you," I said, meaning much more than pie. "You're welcome," she nodded. "Now tell me, what happened with Corbin?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. The attempted credit card theft, the confrontation, the repayment agreement, the silence that followed. "They won't even let me see Zoe," I finished, feeling my eyes fill with tears. She sent one text. "Grandma, Mom said we won't be coming over for a while. What happened?" I didn't know what to answer. I couldn't write that her father had tried to steal money from my card. "Of course not." Beverly shook her head. "You did the right thing. Zoe shouldn't be caught between two fires in this conflict." "But I miss her," I admitted. "It's not her fault, but she's suffering because of her parents' decisions." "She's growing up," Beverly said softly. "Soon she'll be able to decide for herself if she wants to see you, regardless of what Corbin and Delia think." I nodded, knowing she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. "You know what surprises me the most?" I asked after a pause. "That I don't feel guilty. All these years, denying them something or trying to set boundaries, I've always felt guilty, thinking, maybe I'm a bad mom. Maybe I'm too rigid, too demanding. And now I just know that I did the right thing." "Because you did do the right thing." Beverly refilled our glasses. "You gave them everything: love, support, money. And they abused your trust. At some point, you have to say enough is enough." "But why does it hurt so much?" I ran my hand over my face, wiping away an unsolicited tear. "If I know I'm right, why do I feel like I've lost a part of myself?" "Because you've lost the illusion," Beverly answered simply. "The illusion that you could give endlessly, expecting nothing in return, and everything would somehow work itself out. The illusion that a mother's love can overcome any problem. It hurts when reality shatters our dreams." I pondered her words. Beverly was right. I had indeed clung to an illusion, an image of family that hadn't really existed for a long time. "What now?" I asked, more to myself than to her. "Now," Beverly straightened up. "You begin to live for yourself, Marjorie Twist. Not for your son, not for your daughter-in-law, not for your late husband, for yourself. And I'm going to help you do it." Over the next few days, Beverly was true to her word. She dragged me out of the house and introduced me to the blooming Little Rock Garden Club, of which she had been a member for several years. Women of all ages and backgrounds, united by their love of plants, welcomed me with open arms. We met twice a week, Tuesdays at the community garden where we worked on various projects, and Saturdays at members' homes where we shared experiences and plants. For the first time in a long time, I felt part of a community where I was valued for my knowledge and skills rather than seen as a walking ATM machine. Eleanor, a 73-year-old club founder with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, became my mentor in growing rare species of roses. Patricia, an energetic 50-year-old widow, showed me how to create garden sculptures from improvised materials. Young Jessica, barely in her 30s, taught me how to use social media to share photos of my plants with gardeners from around the world. See, Beverly said after one such meeting, life doesn't end with family drama. It's much, much broader than that. And she was right. Every day I felt my world expanding, the void left by the absence of Corbin and his family filling. The pain didn't disappear completely. I doubted it ever would, but it became more bearable, less all-consuming. In late June, when the second payment from Corbin arrived, I received a short message from him. Transferred the money. Hope you're happy. No questions about my well-being, no attempt to communicate. Just a cold notice of a financial obligation fulfilled. I showed the message to Beverly as we strolled through the Little Rock Botanical Gardens. See? I tried to keep my voice steady. For him, it all comes down to money. He thinks I demanded repayment out of greed or vindictiveness. Did you expect him to understand the real reason? Beverly stopped by the lily pond. People tend to project their motives onto others. He's thinking about money, so he thinks you're thinking about money. But I was never greedy. I shook my head. All I wanted was respect. Recognition that I was a human being too, with my own needs and feelings, not just a convenient source of funding. I know, Beverly squeezed my hand. And you do, that's what matters. We continued our walk, the conversation turning to other topics, Beverly's upcoming trip to Portugal, the new gardening book we'd both recently read, the club's plans for a community garden near the nursing home. When I returned home that evening, I stopped at the front door, suddenly realizing how big and empty the house had become to me. 3 bedrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen, too much space for one person. Too many rooms filled with memories, both good and painful. I ran my hand along the door jamb where Elliot had marked Corbin's growth each year. The last mark was made when he turned 16. He'd outgrown his father then and was embarrassed by this family tradition. It was in this house that Corbin took his first steps. In this house, we celebrated his entrance into college. In this house, Elliot spent his last days before illness took him to the hospital, from which he never returned. But in this same house, I felt invisible when Corbin and Delia came to visit, talking as if I wasn't there. In this house, I cried after each of their visits, feeling used and devastated. In this house, I learned that my son had stolen my credit card information. Too many memories. Too heavy a burden. A sudden thought came to me. Why do I have to stay here? What keeps me in this house other than habit and fear of change? The next morning, I called Beverly. I'm thinking of selling the house, I said without preamble. Oh! She sounded surprised but not shocked. Where are you planning to move? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe to a smaller apartment. Or a house in the Hillcrest neighborhood. Somewhere that doesn't have all this baggage. I think that's a great idea. I could hear the smile in Beverly's voice. A new beginning, a new chapter of life. Don't you think it's a little late to start over at my age? I voiced my deepest fear. Marjorie Twist, Beverly sounded almost angry. If at 65 I could start traveling the world alone, at 62 you can definitely move into a new house. Age is just a number. What matters is how you feel inside. Her words gave me confidence. Within a week, I contacted a realtor, had the house appraised, and began my search for a new home. The process was surprisingly uplifting. Looking at different options, envisioning myself in new spaces, planning furniture arrangements and decor. In mid-July, I found what I was looking for. A small but cozy house in the Hillcrest neighborhood, with a lovely garden and east-facing terrace. Perfect for morning coffee and my favorite roses, which of course I plan to replant. When the deal was almost closed, I decided I had to let Corbin know my decision. Not because I needed his approval, but because it was the right thing to do. No matter what, he was still my son. I sent him a quick text. I'm selling the house and moving to Hillcrest next month. Just so you know. The reply came a few hours later. Why? Do you need the money? We're paying off the debt on schedule. Typical. Again, it came down to money. No, I don't need money. I need change, I replied. I see, was all he wrote. I felt a prick of disappointment, but not surprise. What had I expected? That he'd ask if I needed help moving. That he'd ask how I was feeling. that he'd want to see me and talk. He'll never change, I said to Beverly as we packed the books into boxes together. To him, I'll always be the ATM machine that suddenly broke and demanded my money back. Maybe, she carefully wrapped the photo album in paper. Or maybe he just needs time. People grow up very slowly sometimes, especially when it comes to admitting their own mistakes. He's had 43 years to grow up, I shook my head. I can't wait any longer. And you shouldn't have to. Beverly closed the filled box. Your life belongs to you, Marjorie. It's time to live it for yourself. On moving day, I expected mixed feelings, nostalgia, regret, maybe even moments of doubt. But as the furniture trucks pulled away from my old house, I felt only relief. It was as if the heavy blanket that had been weighing me down for years had finally been lifted. My new home was smaller, but brighter and cozier. I'd only put away the things I really loved and treasured. My favorite books, a few family photos, including Corbin's baby pictures. Those were happy years no matter what. A collection of china cups my mother had started collecting. The rest I either sold or gave to charitable organizations. It was another liberating experience, getting rid of material baggage accumulated over decades. On my first morning in my new home, I woke up with the sunrise. The rays streaming in through the bedroom window painted the walls a soft pink. I walked out onto the terrace with a cup of coffee and sat in a wicker chair, watching the world awaken. The neighbor's cat, Ginger and curious, jumped on the railing and studied me from a safe distance. "Hello, stranger," I said. "Hello. Welcome to my new beginning day." He blinked and jumped into the garden, disappearing among the plants. I smiled, sipping my coffee. New neighbors, new acquaintances, new routines, all of these things were ahead of me. The thought of Corbin and Delia still caused pain, but now it was a muted pain, like a long-healed wound that sometimes ached for a change in the weather. I was no longer letting that pain define my life. At breakfast, I looked at the calendar on my phone. Today is the garden club meeting. Tomorrow is a botanical garden field trip with Beverly and a few other ladies from the club. Thursday is the start of the art class I finally decided to sign up for. Life went on. My life. Without toxic influences, without manipulation, without feeling like I had to constantly give without getting anything in return. That evening, a text came from Zoe. "Grandma, Daddy said you moved. Can I come see your new house?" I hesitated. On the one hand, I missed my granddaughter and wanted to see her. On the other, I didn't want to get caught up in Corbin and Delia's manipulative games again. What if they were using Zoe as a tool to get back into my life on the same terms? After much deliberation, I wrote, "Sure, honey. I'd be happy to see you, but let's make arrangements directly without intermediaries." The reply came almost instantly. "Thank you. I can take the bus myself. Maybe on Saturday?" It was a small but significant act of independence on Zoe's part. She was growing up, beginning to make her own decisions. Maybe one day she would be able to understand what had happened between me and her parents and form her own opinion, not based on their interpretation. "Saturday is going to be great. I'll bake your favorite apple pie." I put my phone down and walked over to the window overlooking the garden. The sun was already setting, coloring the sky in shades of purple and gold. My newly transplanted roses were still getting used to the soil, but I knew they would soon take root and bloom, and so would I. At 62, I was beginning a new chapter of my life, a chapter written in my own words, not dictated by the expectations and demands of others. A chapter about self-respect, independence, and the right to be valuable in my own right, not just as a mother or mother-in-law. I didn't know what the future would bring. Whether Corbin would ever change, realize his mistakes, try to truly repair our relationship was beyond my control. I could only control my own actions and decisions, and I chose to live my life to the fullest, open to new possibilities and joys. A life free of toxic relationships and negative emotions. A life worthy of respect and love, first and foremost my own.